One. Hello, everyone. I am in the auxiliary studio area, which doesn't have great lighting. Therefore, I'm going to look adorably dark. I don't know how that's supposed to work. How are you adorably dark? I'm just going to claim it that I'm adorably dark. I mean, look at this. It works. Anyway, yeah. I'm Wilnona, and I remember to introduce myself. High five to me. I'm professional. And if you're wondering what these are just my rubber bands. I was cleaning something in the studio, and then I was like, oh, it's time. I better sit down. So I have them on like it's a lovely bracelet. It's my cleaning bracelet of honor. Anyway, we wrote books. When I mean we, I don't think I have two personalities living in me. That is not how I mean we. I mean, there's normally a Jade right on the side, but there is not one today. So Jade and we wrote books. We have And I Thought Divorce Was Bad, and I Thought Being Grown-Ups Was Easy. If Only I Were Me, a memoir in verse. Widow's Webs, Widow's Debt, Foreign Coffee. And if you're counting, that's 6 books. And there's another 11 to make 17. And you can read about all those and everything else that your ladies are up to at www.andithoughladies.com. But you're not here to hear about me talk about me. And let's admit it, I could do it all day. There's so much to talk about. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Mr. Fig. I'm actually a children's writer from South Florida. I'm about to release my 3rd book. My first 2 books were picture books. One is named Orange Orangutan, which is this one. And then my second one was A World of Candy. This one has a special place in my heart because this one actually was released like a week after COVID basically hit our country and everything got shut down. So the whole process of World of Candy took place over Zoom. And then in about a month, on May 22nd, my 3rd book will be coming out, and I consider that a book of firsts because it's my first book. That's a chapter book. It's my first book that I have multiple languages in it, where it's not just English. One version has English and Creole, Haitian Creole, and the other one is English and Spanish. And it's also it's inspired by real events from my childhood when myself and other relatives of mine used to play in my grandfather's backyard when he was living in Homestead, Florida. And so I've taken that and I've created what is the 3rd book in this new journey for me. And also the other first with that is the first one that I'm doing that may become a series that I do on a regular basis. Everything else, if it becomes a series, it just happens that it works better as a series, but this one, it's decided in advance that this could be a series. And I know that 3 facts about me. I did not start as a children's writer. I did start as a writer doing other types of writing for a time in journalism, and I left that and I became Mr. Fig. And Mr. Fig, this isn't my first time. The second fact is this isn't the first time in my life where I'm Mr. Fig. This is the first time I was Mr. Fig, which is an interesting way I became Mr. Fig. It's when I was actually a high school teacher teaching language arts and journalism. And my students were having problems pronouncing my name. Some students were able to pronounce it, but then there was a lot of them that were butchering it up in so many ways. And eventually we had to come to a compromise. And the first offer was, oh, we'll just call you Mr. F. And anyone that has dealt with teaching or being anywhere near a school, you never want the name Mr. F because that goes bad in so many ways. And then, so somewhere along the line, I don't know what happened. Somewhere to this day, I don't even know where the name came from. But in the discussion, it was determined that I was going to be Mr. Fig. And from that day on, for the rest of my time when I was teaching, I was Mr. Fig. Even as I run into students now, and it's interesting, I run into former students now that have families, and they still refer to me as Mr. Fig. And they do it even in front of their children. They have their children. I'm Mr. Fig to their children, and it's an interesting thing. So that's the first time I was Mr. Fig in my life. And then when I went down the path of children's writing, and I was determining what I wanted to do as far as my name. I wanted to go with a pen name for a certain level of separating my past writing with my children's writing. And of course, everyone that does work in the entertainment business where you tend to deal with public, you also want to maintain a level of privacy in your life. I said, okay, I have to go with a pen name. And when I thought long and hard about it, there was only one name that I felt was appropriate when I decided that, yeah, children's writing was my path. And it was basically Mr. Fig, except I changed the spelling a little bit. I added an extra G and I decided to spell out the Mr. part. And of course, this is the second time I've become Mr. Fig in my life. And this is the version of Mr. Fig that I'm enjoying the most out of it, because it's me chasing a long time dream of mine. And when I'm saying a long time dream, now I'm a middle-aged man, but the dream that's been there has been ever since I was in grammar school, a little kid, just reading stories here and there, all these fantasy stories, some of the lighter science fiction that's not too technical, and also some of the adventure stories. And back then I just said, hey, I would love to do this for a living someday, is writing stories. And I try to draw sometimes back then, but I realized I didn't have talent to draw very well. But stories, I can always put them together. So this is Mr. Fig that I am now. This is the lifelong dream, and hopefully be doing this for the rest of my life.
Oh, that is so exciting. I'm absolutely thrilled to see that you're getting your lifetime goal. I started writing when I was 10. And so, I'm chasing a dream, and seeing the fulfillment of it just makes my heart rejoice. Oh, Ezer, you're a busy man. So I noticed that you said that your book was in 3 languages. I have to ask, do you speak all 3?
No, I've been exposed to, well, obviously English I speak, but with Haitian Creole and Spanish, I've been exposed to it because my mom is Haitian and a part Dominican, because my grandfather was half Dominican, half Haitian, which I think makes my mom 3/4 Haitian and 1/4 Dominican. And then my father was Puerto Rican and more Nuyorican, because he didn't really have any exposure to Puerto Rico itself. He was born and raised in Spanish Harlem. That's where he was from. And as a child, when I was first learning how to talk, they attempted to teach me how to talk with all 3 languages. It didn't work out very well, because when you're getting language acquisition for the first time, not knowing that there's a difference in the languages, I started using all 3 languages, not realizing they were 3 different languages. So they decided to just go with the English side, and they figured that I'd pick it up later. I've never really fully picked it up, but I've picked it up enough as the years have gone by, being exposed to when my mother's side of the family is speaking Creole. And then when my father's side of the family, and of course, living in South Florida, you're exposed a lot to Spanish. And basically, it's a familiarity. I know enough where you place me in the middle of Haiti, or you place me in the middle of any Spanish country, I know enough of both languages that I could find my way back home. That's for sure. And of course, enough that where with these books, the way the other languages appear in the books, it's because I used one of the characters is actually based directly from my grandfather. And since he spoke Creole, some of the lines I put in there is written in a way where he speaks English, and then there's certain lines where he'll say it in English, and then he'll say it in Creole. And that's what I did with that, to make sure that it's understood, and at the same time it gives any child reading these books the opportunity for language acquisition. And then when I put this book together, I determined that I wanted to also have it reflect the other part of my culture, and of course give a chance for obviously the very common language that a lot of kids try to learn in this country is Spanish. So I went ahead and I did the same thing with the Spanish version of it, where I took the lines that would be in Creole and I translated them into Spanish. And that's what I do with these books. And so it's like 90% English, but lines here and there that are done in Creole in the Creole version and Spanish in the Spanish version.
Have you found a lot of success being able to do this with children?
Um, this is the first goal, the first time I'm doing this with one of my books. Now, in living life here in South Florida, I have, and my time teaching, I do know when I've dealt with Haitian students in the past who struggled with English and Spanish students in the past that struggled with English as well. It's just a natural instinct that you get in certain situations where they don't fully understand it, but I happen to know how to translate it over. And then you say, okay, like this, and try my best. I always apologize for that's how my, Creole or Spanish is not my best language. They're not my first languages, but you always get into it where they can, I know enough to where they can understand what I'm talking about when I would try and teach them a lesson, particularly with journalism and then certain parts of language arts, particularly with literature, when I would speak to certain things of literature. And especially when translating a little bit of Shakespeare, which interesting enough.
We speak English. He wrote English, and we all need translation of Shakespeare.
Yeah. And I remember one of the biggest things that I found was fascinating. Even though a lot of kids, when they're in high school and middle school, they find Shakespeare boring, is that I would find the connection there because a lot of what was going on in the Elizabethan era and the traditions that were going on back there, they kind of were still around in Haitian and Caribbean culture and Latino culture as well. So where you can explain that, okay, yeah, this is why this was happening, and then explain it in a way that they can relate that, okay, yeah, my parents are strict in this way and they follow the rules in these ways. And I'll explain to them all of that was going on, especially when you're teaching Romeo and Juliet and Othello, and they would understand what was going on there. And that's where a lot of that came into play.
So how did you go about having success with your debut book? Was it that came out in 2020, The Era of COVID?
That was the second book, A World of Candy. One of the things that I've enjoyed about it, I think it's a great example of how not just the world has changed, but how the writing industry has changed. In generations past, something like COVID would have wiped out the industry heavily, or really any industry. But as we've seen in the writing industry over the last couple decades, mostly, but even little by little, it's been transitioning over, is the rise of independent creators on the writing end, independent authors, indie authors. With that, we have so many sources that are out there. We all get on YouTube. We all get on the various forms of social media. Amazon has changed the industry greatly with what they do because they have a global reach when you have your books with them. You also have you have book companies like Ingram Sparks, because they have such a global reach. And then with social media, if you follow what you're doing with marketing, and not just marketing, but getting to opportunities that puts your name out there, people are going to be interested. And then from there, in the case of picture books, it combines with the actual artwork. And if the artwork is attractive, it's going to draw in kids. But the first part starts with your marketing of getting your name out there as a regular thing. It's that old thing that you hear the old Hollywood saying, that it doesn't matter what they say about you as long as they get your name spelt right. That it's kind of that kind of concept. Once you do that, you're constantly a name, and maybe they don't know exactly who you are, but if you're there and you have a name that's been in their ear before, they say, oh yeah, I've heard of this person. And then, we know that we all follow the greatest tool of all in the current world, or the last decade or so, Google. We all know everyone Googles. And when they Google who you are and they find who you are, they'll say, oh yeah, I'm going to get that book. And I felt that was one of the biggest contributors to the second book, being able to do what it did during the whole COVID era now. The first one was a little easier. Even that one, I went through social media with Twitter mainly. And that's what I felt helped. And then of course I had a lucky moment too. Sometimes you get lucky moments. I don't know, would I be able to mention a name of a specific celebrity, or that would be, I wouldn't
Go
be able to
for
do
it.
that. Oh, so okay. There was a funny story when I was with a critique group that we had. We used to meet at one of the local stores in one of the nice areas of South Florida. Um, and we'd meet there like Saturday mornings. This is when you know you're a diehard author. When you get up on a Saturday morning and you're at a meeting by 9:30 a.m. for critiquing. And I remember I was critiquing one of my colleagues' books. And I was reading some of my comments to him and telling him my thoughts on his story. And then he mumbles something and it sounded like CEO of the Marlins. And I was like, I looked down at my paper when I heard him say that. I was like, wait a minute, did I say that? And I was like, what? And he said, the CEO of the Marlins just walked in. And I'm like, huh? And he said, Derek Jeter, the CEO of the Marlins, just walked in. And I looked up, and yeah, there was Derek Jeter with his wife, and their little daughter actually chose the little booth next to us, and she was playing there. And he happened to look back to check out his daughter, and she was near us. He happened to look in our direction, and of course, me being a Marlins fan, I actually had the Marlins cap, and it wasn't just any Marlins cap; it was the rebranded one that they created when he became part owner of the team. And I just pointed to the hat, like, hey, yeah, and Marlins fan, it's your brand. And he just basically was like smiled and all that. And he did his order, him and his wife did their order, and then they were about to leave. And of course, they had to convince their daughter, who was enjoying playing there and the whole time. And myself and this other writer, we said that oh yeah, we just whispered because we didn't want to disturb his privacy being who he was. And apparently other people either were so used to him being there or they didn't really know much about baseball to know who Derek Jeter was. We just asked for a photo and we went ahead. He agreed to it. We discreetly got the photo right there. And as soon as we did it, they left and I posted it on social media, said, hey, look, this is what happens when you go to a author's critique group. And I hashtagged Derek Jeter, and a whole bunch of people that I guess look for the Jeter hashtag were like all over this tweet that I put out. And I noticed the next day I was looking at my sales, and actually for a few days after that, I was getting a lot of sales based on that. Because I guess under the assumption they're like, oh, well, if this guy somehow is getting a picture with Jeter, he must he must be good. It's little things like that. It's little, that's when you call it little lucky stuff like that. And it helps your brand a little bit because again, you end up being a name that people know the name at that point because they're paying attention to it a little bit. And then there's other little lucky things here and there. Going to the Miami Book Fair helps a lot. Getting out there and other little events here and there. And anytime you can get your books into a store, which also was a key during the COVID thing. I got myself into a couple of different stores to where the books are on the shelf, even though not that many people were going to the stores after there was some openings of venues, but they were seeing the books there. And again, when kids see the art, they jump all over it. And of course, the title helps out. A world of candy. Kids are drawn to the word candy as well. So I think that's what led to a lot of the ability to succeed with that book during that COVID issue of shutdowns and so on and so forth. And when they weren't the shutdowns, there was limited capacity at every venue as well. But that's what I think was the key part for that one. There's a lot of factors in it, which is a lesson for all not just writers, but all creatives that are running their own brand. There's a lot of things you got to do to get that success going.
Now, what 3 pieces of advice would you give anyone that's going to go after their dreams a little later in life?
First thing is don't be afraid to chase them in the first place. I think a lot of people are afraid of chasing their dream. They're scared for whatever various reasons. And that would lead to the second advice that I would give, which is probably the number one thing everyone fears, is don't be fearful of failing, because to me, I think when you are particularly a creative or anything that you have a passion for, that's your dream in life, you're better off trying to go for it and failing instead of never trying and always wondering if you could have succeeded at it. That would be definitely the number two one I'd give, and the most important one that I would give. And the third thing, it's a combination of learning everything you can to help better equip yourself better, and the age old thing, it's a little blue collar mentality of mine. Because I grew up in South Dade, you have to be blue collar. You're blue collar growing up there. Is you got to put in the work. If you're not going to put in the work, don't expect miracles. You might be able to be lazy and get lucky. That can happen, but more often than not, you don't put in the work, you're not going to have the success. It comes out of this, and it ties into a saying that I've always believed in. And it's almost like a forgotten saying that success is hard, failure is easy. When you're not putting in the work, you're going that easy route, and failure is very easy. But you want to equip yourself with the best opportunity to succeed in your dream. You got to put in that work, and you have to learn everything you can. And you may still fail at it, but you know what? At least you gave it your best try.
Exactly. Thank you so much for coming on today. Can you tell people where they can find this book and follow you on social media? I mean, who doesn't want to see the Jeter picture?
Yeah, that's it. Let me see. My website that can direct you to every link that is selling my books online. And then you can find out about some of the stores. And my website is www.misterfigg.com. And then on social media, both Twitter and Instagram, I made sure to keep the same one. It's at Real Mr. Fig. That's RealMisterFigg. And I made sure to keep it on both. So there's never any doubt about where they can find me. And then as far as stores with the next book, it's going to be just about everywhere. It's going to be locally in South Florida. It's going to be at Books and Books, and it's going to be at another place, Sweet Haven Books. But then for everyone that's not in South Florida, it's going to be in Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and Walmart.
Okay. Oh, it's going to be a Walmart. Well
Yeah.
done.
If you go on the websites now, you can actually see it's there, and it's on all of these websites for all of these three companies, and you'll see that it's to be released on May 22nd.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come and chat with us today. And I guess I'll go ahead and wrap us up and wrap my part up. Yeah, us. I don't know. I'm confused today.
That's my world.
You can catch everything that the ladies are doing at www.andithoughladies.com. And when you're there, go down to the middle of the page, and there you can see the charities that we proudly support. We ask that you take a little bit of time and help them out too. We thank you in advance for this. And remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the Missing Jade. Oh yeah. Thanks for listening.